Hey everybody, welcome to the Bass Shed Podcast. My name's Ryan Roberts. What's up everybody? Today on the show is Grammy award-winning pianist and composer Ruslan Sirota. Ruslan has played with he's got a really extensive resume. He's played with the Black Eyed Peas, Stanley Clarke, Corea, George Duke, Marcus Miller, John Patitucci, Thundercat, Kamasi Washington, Victor Wooten. Obviously, you can see that I'm really kind of focusing on the bass players there. He'll talk about an upcoming tour he's got with Richard Bona and Larry Carlton. And I was excited to have Ruslan on the podcast. He's got really thought-provoking ideas, and I was interested to see where the conversation was going to go. And I'd say that at one point. I bring that up to him, and I was glad the conversation took the turns it did. That being said, I used the word provocative incorrectly. Okay, what I meant was thought-provoking, and I used the word provocative. I kind of felt, right after it came out of my mouth, I felt like that wasn't the word. And it wasn't. So when I got home, I looked up the word, and it wasn't the word. That's not what I meant. By dictionary definition of the word provocative, not what I meant at all. I meant thought-provoking, and so I'm just cleaning up that error publicly. I'm calling myself on it, and I'm letting you know that I'm aware that I messed it up. Yeah, I'm aware now at least. I think if in real time I could have chosen better words. Anyway, we had a good talk, and the conversation I had a lot of fun doing it. It's this kind of just really responsive stream of consciousness thing, and it goes some fun places. So I hope you enjoy listening to it. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the Bass Shed Podcast. You can find it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, and Stitcher. All the social media links are pretty much just the Bass Shed. So it's Instagram at the Bass Shed, Twitter at Bass Shed. I forgot what that was. Like the word "the" couldn't be involved because there was already something else tied to it. I forgot what that was. It didn't allow the word "the." So it's Twitter at Bass Shed, Facebook /the Bass Shed. To join the newsletter, text the word SHED, SHED, to 66866, and I will be sending out transcriptions and other goodies. On the last episode, I think it was the last one, I called myself for sucking at being diligent in sending those out regularly. So I'm going to start doing that. I'm going to start sending them out regularly. So if you're interested in transcriptions for yourself, maybe transcriptions for your students to play through, text SHED to 66866. SHED to 66866. Yeah, that's kind of what's happening. I've been really checking out this record called Soul Brothers / Soul Meeting with Milt Jackson and Ray Charles. It was two separate recording sessions that they put together for this record, and Percy Heath and Oscar Pettiford split the bass chair on it. It's all blues-based material, but I didn't know that Ray Charles had that much bebop vocabulary as a piano player. The whole record is fantastic, and it swings really hard. But I was shocked by that, and I can't stop listening to it, and I kind of can't stop talking about it. The other night, I was hanging out with a bunch of jazz buddies, and I was bringing it up, and no one seemed to know about it. I need to talk to some more people. I feel like I was in the dark on the record, and then, as soon as I found out about it, I texted some friends. I'm like, man, you guys know about this? Like, how am I just learning about this record? Soul Brothers / Soul Meeting, Milt Jackson, Ray Charles, great record. I'm really into it, at least. I don't know. Actually, this kind of ties into something Ruslan and I talk about what's in us that we respond to the different music. I don't know. So I think it's great. Maybe you guys all think it suck. Maybe you're not interested in either Milt Jackson or Ray Charles. I'm assuming everybody has heard of Ray Charles. For those who may not know who Milt Jackson is, he was a vibraphone player and the leader of a quartet called the Modern Jazz Quartet. So that's that. I'm going to stop rambling, and here is my talk with Ruslan Sirota.
Let it roll. 1, 2.
All right, we're in.
We're in?
Yeah.
Dope. Yeah, buddy.
All right. So this is interesting, man. Like I don't know where to start with you. Like you've done a bunch of stuff that's all interesting, and I'm interested in how you got those gigs and all that. To set it up, you were born in the Ukraine.
Yep.
Moved here to go to Berkeley.
Well, I was pretty much close enough. I did move here to go to Berkeley. I was born in Ukraine. I moved to Israel when I was 9.
Okay.
With my family. I stayed there for like 10 years.
Yeah.
Got a full ride to school. That was my excuse.
Sure.
I was like, I'm out of here. Going to the States. Moved to Boston. I was 19. Went to Berkeley. Did the Berkeley thing.
Yeah.
That opened some doors, and I met some people along the way. Kind of acclimated a little bit. That's it. And started playing weddings and playing church gigs and playing bar gigs in Boston.
In Boston? Top 40?
Yeah, absolutely. Got to pay bills, right?
Yeah.
23. Got a little keyboard.
Okay.
Split it 5 ways so I could have a pad and a piano and an organ and strings and everything.
Did you graduate Berkeley?
I did.
Okay, because that's always the thing. Like everybody went there to not graduate.
Right. But I come from a sort of like a Slavic Jewish family from the Soviet Union.
Okay.
Who believes that people should go to school and graduate. God forbid something happens. So my mom still has my diploma.
Okay.
Admittedly, I mean, I'm glad I did. It was great because I got to take all kinds of classes like history of art and all that awesome stuff.
Yeah, I'm into that.
But no one since that day had ever asked me, from funerals to stadiums, no one had ever asked me, had I graduated or what have I done and any of that. No one cares.
So 19, Berkeley doing little gigs. What was after Berkeley?
Well, I started playing around Boston and playing at the church, playing weddings and playing clubs. And my friend called me, who was in Stanley Clarke's band at the time, and said, Stanley's looking for a keyboard player.
Nice.
And I was like, well, I'll send the tape. I sent the cassette. I was super excited. I didn't hear from Stanley.
What did you play for the audition? Did you play a Stanley tune?
No, I played a jazz tune. I played a funk tune, a fusion tune, a ballad, because I knew he was kind of coming from jazz, but he's a fusion guy. But
big time.
So, so I'm like, okay, let me do all that. He didn't call back or didn't write back. I figured I blew it.
Yeah.
7 months later, he called. He was like, yeah, I was busy. Tape sounds great. Why don't you come out to L.A.?
Who was doing the gig before you?
Who was it? I think Nick Smith was doing it before me.
Okay.
Who was a monster piano player.
Out of L.A.?
Out
of L.A.?
I think he's in L.A. I'm pretty sure he's not out of L.A. He's in L.A. now and's been here for a long time. I forgot where he's from. Detroit, I think. I don't remember where he's from.
Okay. I don't know him.
He's great. I don't see him around LA that much. He might be living outside LA somewhere. He played with Kenny Garrett. He played with a bunch of people. He's bad, yeah.
Yeah, nice. Okay, so then how long were you in Stanley's band?
Man, so that started happening for quite some time. But I guess to stick to the story, then I got Brian McKnight's music director.
Yeah.
Was in Boston.
Okay.
So he approached me and said, hey, listen, Brian McKnight's looking for a piano player.
Killing.
And so Stanley's out of LA.
Yeah.
Brian's out of LA.
Right.
Here I am in Boston.
Yeah, right. It does make sense.
Yeah, and then there was a year, I think 2005 or 6.
Okay.
I think I don't remember which year, where I literally I just had a storage space in Boston with all of my stuff.
Yeah.
And I was on the road so much, and I was like, well, I'm sure they'd both appreciate if I was around.
Right.
And this kind of
see what else is going on in LA. Like you got 2 major gigs. Like maybe I should just be there.
Right.
And go make the hang.
Right. And I was always kind of a half jazz guy,
Okay.
half God knows what.
That's hilarious.
No, it's
Well, it's
truly.
just funny to hear you say
Right.
that you're a half jazz guy, but
Yeah.
you're a like I mean we're a crossover player. Like you can do.
Yeah, I mean, I guess
You're not necessarily like a jazz Nazi.
right. I guess when I'm thinking of a jazz guy, someone I look up to or think of something like someone like I don't know, Aaron Parks or
Sure.
something. Okay, so of course that guy could probably play any gig.
Yeah, but
he
he's-
doesn't, and he just plays jazz, and it's amazing.
Yeah.
And it's like that's that.
Right.
So I'd be lying if I said that I'm that person, and my career would call out my bluff.
right.
No,
But growing up, were you always like a little bit like,
I was.
damn, I'm not the jazz guy. Like I'm
I
not an
was.
Aaron Parks. Or,
I was. I always was. But then I have to admit the truth about myself too.
Sure.
I didn't start listening to, straight ahead jazz until well into my 20s.
Yeah.
I got a full scholarship to Berkeley before I heard my first Sony Stitt record.
Okay. right.
I've never transcribed the Charlie Parker solo before the age of 25.
Sure.
And that's the truth.
Yeah.
Bad or good.
Right.
I was listening to the Yellow Jackets and
Yeah,
Pat
yeah, yeah.
Metheny Group and Weather Report and Dave Weckel's solo records and all that.
Now, was
but
that
it-
because of? I think you're just a few years older than me, but same thing. I was listening to all those '90s guys, like. So if it was straight ahead, it was still Brecker's straight ahead
That's right.
thing, you know.
That's right.
And then Patitucci, a lot of
That's
Metheny,
right. That's right.
all those same records. And I didn't go back and I didn't get into, the old Red Garland, Earl
Right.
Gardner. I didn't do that till way later.
Right, and there's a price for doing it this late.
For
It-
doing the retroactive?
Yeah, it doesn't stick as well.
Right.
Because you're not 14 when you're absorbing it. These are no longer the fundamentals. You're just updating your current thing with that, which is also very good and very important.
I
but
agree.
it's not the same that if you had been 12 years old listening to Wynton Kelly.
Sure.
You weren't.
I do, I think, going back, I have a different appreciation for it.
You must have. Of
You know,
course.
because now all of a sudden it's like, okay, now I know where everybody got their
That's
thing.
right. That's right. That's right.
And I understand the lineage of the
That's
whole
right.
continuum of the jazz world. And so it holds. It's more special to me instead of being 16 or 17 and like, no, that's not
Sure.
hip because it's
Right.
not Jocko.
But you know what's interesting? What's interesting is that I remember having some kids around,
Mhm.
and I'm sure, I'm not sure, but I'm wondering, whether this was. They were actually kids back then who thought it was hip.
Oh,
I
the
just
old
wasn't
stuff?
one of them.
Yeah.
I just was not. I didn't understand what's so hip about Wynton Kelly when you have Kenny Kirkland.
Right.
Right. I understand now.
Sure.
And I've long since understood.
Yeah.
But at the time of when I was laying my foundations as a musician,
Right.
I most certainly did not understand
Yeah,
what the hell
exactly.
is so special
Right.
about Wynton Kelly when there's Keith Jarrett.
Yeah.
And I listen to Keith Jarrett day and night, yeah, but
Right.
you really in Keith Jarrett there's so much going on
Right.
that to extract the fundamentals out of it it was a challenge to say the least, and it's also not how it should be done.
Right.
Which is why it didn't work. Which is why I eventually went to the older jazz guys
Yeah.
and said, well, look,
Now, do you think
something
this is a
missing.
thing that just happens in our generation because we want to be relevant, right? So maybe a 17-year-old, 18-year-old coming up right now is listening to a ton of Thundercat or something,
right.
And because they want to be relevant, and that's what's in their face,
Well,
and
yeah.
then but they have to go back to understand.
Well, it depends what you're in it for. I mean, my understanding that if someone's listening to Thundercat right now, it's probably for the same reason that anyone ever listens for anything. Thundercat happens to reflect
oh yeah,
in
of
his
course.
music a culture,
Yeah, absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
From which that individual, that young person,
Right, can
is
identify with.
probably coming
Yeah.
to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a resonance there.
Of course.
Now,
So with that being said, I'm curious about this. That being said, what was that in the Yellow Jackets and the Pat Metheny group that you were responding to?
I wonder what it was. I've asked myself this question many times, and I think there's a certain, that's really interesting. There's a certain lyricism, there's a certain emotional quality to the melodies
Mm-hmm.
and the harmony. I grew up in the Ukraine, in Soviet Union,
Yeah.
right? There was a lot going on in the music of what that was surrounding me at the
Sure.
time, the pop music, the folk music of that land, of those peoples. there's a lot of really sort of emotional harmony,
Okay.
gut-wrenching, heart-wrenching melody.
Yeah.
So it's not, this is just, of course, a hypothesis, but it's not impossible, man, that that the music of Pat Metheny and, say, the Yellow Jackets and all had some kind of aesthetic properties, or maybe harmonic even, or melodic properties that were resonant with some of the music
Okay.
that I came up listening to in some very, very subconscious ways.
Sure.
Not
There's an
necessarily, oh, this
identification.
sounds like the stupid Russian song.
Yeah.
No,
Right,
no,
right, right.
not quite that simplistic,
Right.
right? But there's something, and then, that's one part of the answer. And the second part of the answer, who the hell knows?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I don't know what the fuck I liked about, Dave Weckl Master Plan when I was 13.
Right.
There was just something I loved about it so much I was willing to happily die for it.
Sure.
And there could be some kind of anthropological, culturally conditioned explanation that I offered in the first part of my answer.
Yeah.
Or I could be totally off the mark here, right? But the fact remained, there was something about that music, the color of the harmony, the melodies, the continuity, the lyricism, the sort of how lyrical. They're very lyrical writers.
Yeah.
Ferrante is a really, really lyrical writer. Bob Mincer is a really lyrical player. Metheny is about as lyrical as they come.
Exactly.
In
his writing and his soloing, yeah.
Forget it.
It's nuts.
What? Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, I know.
So I think it's the lyricism that I identify. Maybe it's just my own emotional blueprint that resonates with that. It could be the cultural conditioning. It could be my own personal properties. Who knows? There was enough there that I knew this is what I love. I love this. I love this more than life.
Mm.
But of course, then I got to meet all these people later and work with many of them.
Sure.
And of course, all they listen to is Red Garland, right? I'll never forget. I was having a conversation with Bob Mincer.
Yeah.
We did a gig in Germany last year.
Okay.
I was super, super lucky to play with his quartet.
Yeah.
And I was like, truth be told, Bob, like I listened to a lot more Yellow Jackets than I listened to the, St. Rollins.
Yeah.
And so he looked at me like, like I was fucking crazy. Like, well,
Right.
that's not really a good thing, Ruslan, is it?
Was it that
yes,
his
that
actual
was
response?
that's what his response was.
Huh.
And I was like, sir, yes, sir. I guess not,
Right.
sir. Yeah.
Yeah, but that also goes back to what you wanted to get out of the music, you know.
Well, the way they're looking at it, what they're saying is this.
Right. Is
They're
start
like,
from the
the marks, they say.
Yeah.
The goals, they say, we're still trying to hit in the Yellow Jackets.
Right.
Are best exemplified to this date in that other music.
Right.
In Red Garland. So what we're aiming at, sure, we're using different maybe kind of voicings for our chords.
Right, and there's a different beat behind it.
And there's a different beat behind it, and the snare's tuned a little higher.
Right.
But the goals we aim at hitting, the bullseye targets we aim at,
are still from the heroes.
are the ones not only that they were aiming at, the older guys, but the ones that no one since them had ever hit as good as they did.
Sure.
So what are you wasting your time, they'll tell you, listening to this shit,
Right.
when all we're trying to do is maybe use some maybe more modern language, but in terms of building a solo, in terms of continuity, in terms of how to comp, in terms of how to interplay, in terms of how to keep time, in terms of how to have a good sound, how to swing, how to do, it's all from there.
Yeah, it's all back
They'll
there.
tell you.
Right.
So what are you wasting your time for?
Right.
And well, of course, and then at that point, I'll come and say to them in response, look, I'll tell them, I resonated with this music because it reflected the culture of the time that I was in.
Yeah.
Just like the kid
That was your reality.
That's right.
Yeah.
The kid who resonates with Thundercat.
Yeah.
Thundercat doesn't listen to Thundercat.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
He doesn't.
Exactly.
We know what he listens to. He's our friend.
Right.
But look, that's kind of just the way of the world. And I wonder if things get shallower and shallower as a result, or if things equalize somehow and it's a matter of perception. I'm not really sure what's going on.
Yeah, I mean the idea about the target, that's a fascinating conversation because all those dudes throughout history, there's major landmarks of people hitting major targets.
Yeah.
Sonny Rollins being one, Artadium being one.
Forget it. Yeah.
Bill Evans being one. Oh, but they were just their target was really to be as genuine to themselves as possible.
Right. Well,
So I feel like if that's the target you're trying to hit,
right. Well, but okay. So that's first of all that's a big one for sure.
Yeah.
But once you talk to like musicians,
Right.
they'll have to sort of give you, I feel, a list, right?
Of
Like,
course.
okay, so having
course.
good tone,
Yeah.
having good time, having continuity in your solos, having motivic development in your solos,
Right.
doesn't having your solo be compositional,
Right.
not just a bunch of garbage that you spew out.
Right.
So being genuine and true to yourself is a huge overarching umbrella.
that all the fundamentals
Right,
are,
but you
go
can't
through.
leave it there. As a musician, it's not just as a
No.
musician. It's all these other things too. It's like,
Sure.
do you keep good time? Do you
Right.
tell a story in your solo?
Right.
Do you know how to play a ballad? You spastic piece of. Can you play right? Like stuff like that. Like,
Yeah.
can you play slow? For
Right.
God's sake, if your freaking life depended on
Right.
it. Could you? Geez, let's see.
Not blow your wad in chorus one.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Could you take me through something? Could you keep me on the edge of my seat?
Yeah.
Could you stay creative through the entire gig and not just have something great to say in the first 3 songs?
Right.
'Cause- So I
Staying creative on the same material night 2.
night 3, night
Yeah.
45. So I'm guessing it's also these things too.
Mhm.
And I have a feeling that as musicians, say like Mincer and those guys, like they aim at those things, right?
Sure.
And so. And that's the things that they appreciate so much, and the old school guys,
Right.
which were amazing
Yeah.
at that, the great ones.
No, I mean, just, these kind of beautiful, iconic, curious minds.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
were just relentlessly looking
yeah, that's right, and
That's-
relentlessly trying to improve their
themselves and the nature of those around them.
right, that's
it was
right,
a
yeah.
really social
hmm
endeavor
right,
back then, which is what I find when I go back to those recordings. It was so social that everybody was really in it for the
Right.
good of who the four were together.
yeah. Well, of course, who said Keith Jarrett said this? To say that music comes from music
Yeah.
is like saying that babies come from babies.
Right.
Right? Music does not come from music. There's a lot going on behind the scenes,
Sure.
culturally, like you said, like socially, like you
Mhm.
said. Yeah, and it all gets reflected. So of course, then no wonder that different people get magnetized to different kinds of musics.
Right.
Well, that's one of the reasons. But yeah, I mean, I forgot. God, we started talking about this. Is amazing. How the hell? Oh my God.
Berkeley in the 90s or
I know
something?
how this happened. I told you, like, I was gonna say, I was gonna say, no, man. So I moved to LA. I was always kind of a half jazz guy, half anything
yeah.
guy, and I didn't know if I'm gonna go to New York, should go to LA. I was gonna say that,
Yeah.
and before I knew it,
Yeah.
we're down this vortex of like, oh, so it's a social change of a.
No, but see, that's why I'm so interested to talk to you, because I knew that there, and I had been, since we were discussing getting together today, I'm like,
Mhm.
what do I want to talk to Ruslan about? Because I know wherever we start, there's going to be this rabbit hole of just provocative ideas.
Oh.
And I'm like, should I try to set that up,
Interesting.
or should I just kind
Oh,
of let
gosh.
that?
What's so
Open up.
provocative? What was? Oh God, I haven't even got my trousers off. This is
that's the provocativeness.
right. Yeah. Oh gosh. I mean, yeah. I mean, I could be.
So we were at Stanley, Brian McKnight. They're both out here. You got the storage
right,
locker.
and I was like, well, I guess it's not going to be New York now, is it?
Right.
I guess I'm gonna move to LA. So I moved to LA, and and so I moved here. And of course, when you move here, things immediately become a lot less jazzy,
Yeah.
right? Let's be honest,
Yeah.
right? Things become a lot more other things, and a
Uh-huh.
lot of more other subtle art forms and amazing things that you learn and figure out and
Sure.
apply yourself if you so choose. But things most certainly become a lot less jazz oriented.
Yeah.
If you actually want to work, and by work I don't mean playing at the Holiday Inn,
Right. Right.
or the
But then there's that, like, you're doing those gigs, and because if you want to be a super serious jazz guy and you're doing the Holiday Inn gig, that's not really scratching that itch, because it's not like you're really hitting.
for most. Yeah, I feel like there is a small circle of people here
Mm-hmm.
who are actually really good players,
Yeah.
and you don't see them play all the time, and they teach a lot.
In the straight ahead world?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
mainly in the yeah. That's I forgot to say that. Yes,
Yeah.
in the straight up. There's a couple of people, and they sound great,
Yeah.
and there's not a lot that I can think of
Sure.
that are like really like masterful. Like there's a couple, and they do some recording sessions and they play gigs, and I think they teach a bunch.
Yeah.
But then that's just the lot in life of the good jazz musician. Like
Right.
to do what here? You're not going to be Joe Pass,
Right.
necessarily. And Joe Pass played at Disney
Right.
too. So every,
I don't know that much about him.
oh
so.
dude, forget it.
There was he was the one that was in prison at one point, right? Like
I
taught himself to
think
play in prison.
So I'm not sure. I remember who was like, oh wait, someone else was telling me about this. Larry Carlton was telling me about this. And when he
Okay.
was a kid, he was subbing for someone on a gig here, and I think, did he say Joe Pass,
Oh,
or
wow.
did he say someone else? Oh God, I could be lying. I'm sorry, but it was someone, either Joe Pass or someone like that, who was doing some bullshit fucking awful brunch, whatever, Disney something.
Right.
And
But they're like burning.
who cares? They needed rent, man.
No, yeah, I know,
Yeah,
but
well,
it's a burning player.
Forget
like
burning. They're
A-lister.
famous.
Okay, yeah.
Not just burning.
Like
of
Kenny
course
Burrell
burning.
type?
Yeah, something like
Yeah.
not just burning. I'm saying like I'm talking famous.
Iconic guy, yeah.
Yeah, famous.
Yeah.
Nope. Doing
Yeah.
general business gigs, dude. So yeah,
Bills happen.
whatever, man.
Yeah.
That's how it goes.
Right.
But so I moved here, and things got a lot less jazzy.
Mm-hmm.
And
To be expected.
yeah, at that point, I was heavily sort of into gospel music.
Okay.
I got into gospel music on the East Coast, and I tried to figure out how to play it, and how to sound good playing it. And I had to hang around a lot of those types of guys
In Boston?
in Boston,
Okay.
New York.
What's the gospel? Oh, well, New York. Okay,
Mhm.
that makes. What's the What's the gospel culture like player-wise in Boston?
Well, it's the East Coast, and it's
Right.
also Berkeley.
That's what I'm interested in.
So-
Is like, do you have a bunch of Berkeley guys trying to hack the gospel thing? Or
Well,
you have
there's
some,
also a bunch of guys in Berkeley who are students who play nothing but gospel.
they came up
right?
through the church.
They came
and
up
then-
through the church, and
yeah.
they're very good and very talented.
Yeah.
But they don't read a note in
Sure.
music. They play by ear, but their gospel playing is just mind-boggling.
Yeah.
And they're from Chicago, Atlanta,
Mhm.
Detroit, New York,
Right.
all over the place. And so there's a bunch, because it's a Berkeley is there.
Yeah.
It's like you live in a bunch of those other cities because you get to experience those players.
Right. Of course.
Right. So yeah, there were cats around Boston,
Just
to
crushing
school you on some
Yeah.
church stuff, and I definitely got schooled, and it opened the doors. I guess in transition, I was so scarred with the jazz thing. I never felt like I was really, because the people who went to school with me, my classmates, my first roommate in Berkeley was Walter.
Oh wow.
Right.
Okay, Walter Smith the
Walter
third.
Smith,
For,
right.
yeah.
And so Kendrick, Walter, those were the guys in my
Yeah.
school in the cafeteria eating.
Hilarious.
So I never felt like I was, half as good as those guys. And
Right, because they're.
oh,
That's their-
Jesus, you
that's
should
their
have heard
thing.
those
Yeah.
fuckers when they were 19. They were just, they're I'm sure a lot better now, but
Yeah.
they were so good then, it was not even,
Sure.
you can't, just so I got so scarred, I just kind of got really depressed and stopped practicing altogether.
Yeah.
And started smoking a bunch of pot with a bunch of hippies.
So
and
you
listening to
you
Dave
stopped
Matthews.
practicing jazz, or you just kind of like walked away from the piano?
I walked
because
away from the piano for a good 2 years.
a
man.
little just burnout because of school.
Because I was so insecure. Look, I mean, you have to understand where I was coming from. I got a full scholarship to Berkeley.
Mm-hmm.
I literally thought I was the absolute best thing that ever happened
Sure.
to jazz piano.
Right.
Well, not quite exactly.
No, but you're young and you
But
get
I
this
was like,
thing
yeah,
and
I'm
it
the
takes
shit.
you to the
Are you
States
kidding
and now
me?
you're in
Yeah.
a major
I'm
school.
the shit.
Yeah.
And of course, I wasn't.
Yeah.
And
I didn't mean
kinda
to agree with that so quickly.
Well,
was
no,
just,
thank you.
I wasn't.
But truly, they were the shit.
Sure.
And they still are. It's not a coincidence that they are still some of the most successful, celebrated, and sought-after players,
Mhm.
to this day, which is what now, 20 years later.
Right.
So, so that's kind of how it went. So I kind of got burnt out, and I got kind of really insecure, and I moved to a new country.
Yeah.
I broke up with my girlfriend at the time.
Oh, it was a whole.
I met
implode.
these kids who shattered my sort of reality,
Mhm.
and
or idea of it.
or idea of
Actually
reality.
exposed
That's
your
exactly-
reality,
That's right.
shattered the.
That's right.
Yeah.
The myth,
Yeah.
the illusion. God, I don't know that I've ever really fully recovered from that. But
I wonder if that's just like a subtext within the genre sometimes about playing jazz. It's like you're never good enough. Just like it seems like no matter who I do talk to about it, everybody, that music and the culture with what it is now, breeds that.
sure, I guess that's hard to disagree because everyone's exposed to everything, and
Yeah.
I guess I would perhaps attempt to draw a distinction between knowing that there are things that I could be doing perhaps better. I wish I was doing better. And distinction from that, between that and say having your classmates
Right.
burn a hole in your ass
Yeah.
so wide that you're like, forget that I could be better.
Yeah.
Forget that it's not. What are
Right.
you talking about?
Right. It's not like, I
listen
got
to
to
these
work
people.
on.
They quit the Monk Institute the semester before they came to us
Oh.
because it wasn't good enough for them, right?
Okay.
So there's being hard on yourself, and there's this.
Right.
So
Right. No, that's
it's
next level.
a little bit, yeah. Of course, there's being like, well, I wish sure, you wish you were better, yeah,
Right.
of course. But there's also something. Yeah, we quit the Monk Institute because we're 19 and it's not good enough for us.
Right.
So we quit
Yeah, I'm not feeling inspired
by the goddamn fucking Monk Institute.
Yeah.
Right?
right.
Sorry, not good enough.
Yeah.
And you know what? You're right. It is not good enough.
Yeah. No, I mean,
Good
good on them for having that work
right,
ethic.
exactly. So for me, that really kind of messed me up, and I got like so scarred by all of that stuff. And I came around bad time in my life because I just moved. And I was done with my first girlfriend, and a bunch of stuff went down. So I kind of stopped practicing.
Okay.
And
Now, what music were you listening to when you walked away from the instrument? Were you listening to music that didn't? So you're not looking or seeking out music that is necessarily going to inspire you as a pianist. You're going to listen to what? Something
I listened
that's
to the
just
music that resonated with the sadness I was feeling with all of my friends hitting on my ex-girlfriend.
Okay, and what was the music?
A bunch of songwriters.
Yeah.
Yeah, a bunch of music that I discovered here in America. A bunch of music from where I came from,
Okay.
Israel. Yeah, I was fucking sucked.
Yeah, and you're just in a depression for a few years. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was awful. And then, I was hanging out with some kids
Yeah.
on my floor in the dorms
Just getting high.
and get high, and they needed help with their Harmony 1 project.
Okay.
So I just did it.
Yeah. Right.
And then hey, do you know Dave Matthews?
Okay.
I'm like, I don't.
Yeah.
They played me a bunch of Dave Matthews and
So
got me
most
high.
of
I
that
never
stuff's
smoked
like
weed before.
Pretty dark. Like
Yeah.
I like Dave Matthews, and I've gone back actually recently and checked it out.
Yeah.
And like these tunes
Oh,
that I grew up with, like now I'm really checking out. I'm like, man, that's dark.
Yeah.
That's just like it's great writing.
Well, that's why young people are attracted to it. It's difficult being a teenager.
No, yeah, sure.
for
It's a
so many
confusing
of us,
time in your
right.
life, of course.
Exactly. So it's like, so I was just like, yeah. And I'm like, I love Brett Meldau. I'm like, I love Keith Jarrett. I love Kenny Kirkland. But I was in the middle of so much personal turmoil
Yeah.
that I was just like, man, I wasn't even. I still did okay. I mean, I kept my scholarship. I was passing all the classes. I tested out of 2/3 of the classes
Okay.
I needed to take anyway.
So you're still going through the school curriculum, but you're
Of
not
course.
you're not
Dude,
practicing
I'm on
the
a full
side.
scholarship. Dude.
Yeah, you have to. Yeah.
To defend it, but I'm not like making the best of my time.
Sure.
My-
You're just kind of a typical college guy.
Right.
Although
Right.
full ride to music in enough
Yeah.
for the country. But
Yeah.
you're just like hanging out.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
tripping off on cough syrup
Yeah.
and like being depressed and being
Yeah.
sad, and I was like really an introvert, and I was really kind of lonely and
Yeah.
not really like kind of a loner, and all the people around me, for them, the American kids, it was a continuation of high school.
Right.
It was just like high school, so they had the social skills they acquired in high school, except the parents were no longer around to
Right.
boss them around and tell them what to do, which was
Right.
awesome for
Yeah,
them.
yeah.
But it was an organic progression for them.
Sure.
Whereas for me, this was just like, what the fuck is all of this?
Yeah.
So it's
So that's interesting because it could go, one of two ways. You could either like really dive into music because you have nothing else, and like
Right.
now this is your relationship that you're
Correct.
cultivating, but you don't. So what are you doing with your free time? You just sitting around listening to Elliott Smith getting stoned?
Something like that, or jamming with people, or doing that, or sitting around getting stoned,
Mhm.
or I'm certainly not, transcribing Brad Meldo and transposing it into all 12 keys.
right.
I'm certainly not doing that anymore.
Right, you
I did
backburnered
before.
the academia.
Right, I
Yeah.
did going to up until
Sure.
that point. I'm certainly not doing that. But then I ran into these players and musicians who were like, do you know Lynette Williams?
Yeah.
She plays keys. And
Yeah,
she's
yeah.
around LA.
I played with her at church for the first time.
of course,
like, this is
exactly.
years ago, and like,
yeah.
damn.
So Lynette, so
Damn.
I'm going upstairs to like practice piano, and I'm seeing, this girl,
Okay.
playing the piano. I'm like, hey, can I listen? And so I sit on the chair and I listen to her play. And I'm trying to figure out what the hell she's playing.
Yeah.
And it sounds like almost like classical piano because it's really like really kind of rolling and like really emotional.
Yeah.
But it's got a bunch of jazz chords in it.
Okay.
Right? I'm like, what the heck is? I was like, what is this music?
Yeah.
And she was kind of, she grew up playing at church.
Yeah.
I was like, it's gospel.
Yeah.
What? What?
Yeah.
Gospel? And I was classically trained, and I was trained in jazz. Played jazz.
But now, music that is correlated to a sense of religion or spirituality in Ukraine, what is that music? Very classic? A lot of just chanting? Is there instruments?
Yeah, it certainly doesn't have any of those jazz chords in it.
No,
for damn sure.
Right, that's American.
It's more like traditional Orthodox Christian.
Okay.
Yeah, and some chanting because they're the Orthodox Church. That's right.
Right.
So, but it's nothing like this.
No.
Right? It's nothing like this. So.
But I'm trying to understand your brain when you hear that this is gospel and this is...
Oh, I didn't know it was gospel. I didn't know it was Christian music.
Okay.
I didn't know the first thing about it.
Yeah.
I was like, why is this classical piano? Why? It sounds like she's playing kind of classical music.
Right.
But it's not really as precise. So I think she's improvising it
Right.
in a way.
But then there's a passing chord every beat.
Right. Like, what the heck is this jazz stuff doing in all of these classical arpeggiated,
Yeah.
beautiful pianistic things?
Sure.
What is this gospel? So I got into that. I was like, I started trying to play it, and I started picking the brains of people.
Yeah.
Who were around me, who were playing it, which turns out were quite a few.
Yeah.
And so that opened. Then I was like, and this was a lot less stressful than jazz, because I was the underdog. I was the only white person trying to do it. I wasn't expected to be good by anyone.
Right.
I didn't have a full scholarship to defend.
Yeah.
No one was putting me under a microscope trying to be as good as somebody.
Did you feel like that in the jazz world at Berkeley because of your scholarship and maybe some
well,
cloud that you walked in with?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because of the scholarship and because I truly was a jazz pianist.
Sure.
I was expected to deliver a certain level, which I don't think I could deliver at the time. And I don't know that I still can. Maybe better than then, but, I'm also 20 years older, so different things are expected and all that.
Of course.
But so that sort of gave me the liberty and the freedom to just love music again.
Yeah.
And great. Oh, I'm the worst one? Great.
Yeah.
Great.
That's freeing in
Spare
the
me,
sense.
yeah. Spare me.
I mean, it could go either way. You could feel
Right.
Self-conscious and ashamed and want to
No,
bow out, or you could be inspired.
Right. In my case, it
wanna
was the
soak it
latter
up.
one. The
Yeah.
self-conscious and ashamed was jazz.
Yeah.
That's why I stopped playing, and because I was like, God, I don't think I can ever be as good as these kids, and I don't think they're listening to Sting when they go to sleep
right.
either.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
And so I look up to them so much, and I think they're so great.
Sure. Have you played with any of those dudes, Walter or Kendrick, since school?
Absolutely.
You've revisited?
Yeah, of course. God, I mean, the older I get, the more appreciation I have to how truly unbelievable they are.
Yeah.
They really are the best we have as far as I'm concerned, in terms of improvising and being creative. And like, those guys really are sort of, when it comes to improvised music, soloing over chords and like the depth to which these guys took it.
Sure.
is paralleled by that. They really are the greats of our time.
Yeah.
I knew it then, and it's still sort of true. They play with the most famous old school guys, and they're the most famous young guys.
Right.
It's it's like that. But yeah, I've got the chance to play with them on a couple of occasions.
And
since
how
then.
did you feel after those gigs? Kind of thinking about the arc of those relationships. Like, oh man, I remember 20 years ago I felt like this in the cafeteria, and now we just finished whatever 4 nights somewhere or something.
Right.
And like, yeah, I bring something different to the music, but it has just as much value.
Right. I wonder, I find with myself, I guess the biggest complaint I have with myself, I never considered myself consistent enough and profound enough an improviser.
Huh.
Because it takes a certain level of focusing and being in the moment.
Sure.
And really following through on the solo and not resetting your ideas every. So I never really felt like I really accomplished being able to do that consistently.
Okay.
I feel like I have a lot of other things to offer, but I feel like to be a great improviser, you kind of have to have those boxes fucking checked.
Yeah.
Right? And I felt like I'm more able to do that these days, certainly, than I was in 1999 when Walter and I were in the 150 dorms.
Yeah.
But even to this day, on a good solo, I'll do that.
Yeah.
But I can't. But I can't tell you that this is my level of improvising.
Okay.
And so I felt more comfortable on those later occasions, rather. I felt more comfortable in my own shoes because, I was older and I've survived long enough and played enough music, and I was a better musician than I had been back then. I could still tell that, what's a good example? Like, I don't know, like. There are people like I don't know. How do you think Lyle Mays would sound with Walter, right?
Right.
Like or Russell Ferrante. What do you think they'd sound like if they played with Kendrick Scott and Walter and Ambrose and like they'd still sound good.
Sure.
Because they're fucking amazing musicians.
Of course.
But no, it wouldn't quite be the Kenny Kirkland or the Aaron Parks.
Yeah, there's
it would be something different.
To use either one of those analogies, it like as I imagine that band, there's the other ones, Ambrose and Walter, and they're coming at it with this really just strong. I don't know any of them. I think I met Ambrose once, but it's not like we've ever talked about music. But they're just coming out with just like this conceptual force. That everything else, whatever they're doing harmonically and rhythmically, is channeled through. Like this strong conceptual kind of narrative is the pipeline for all this brilliance. Now, all their tools are all the things we're all working with: rhythm, time, sound, all that. But they just have this really specific concept that's personal and unforgiving.
Right. As it should be.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Sure.
So, but like to cite the people I cited, like Russ Ferrante or Lyle, like those people are my heroes.
Okay.
Right? Like those people are they actually do those things I lack. The reason they're my heroes is because they play the language that I love the most, often with the depth of compositional elements in their solo that only the Walters of the world seem to have.
Yeah.
Right, and there's only a few guys I know that I can think of that have those other language that's not jazz language.
Yeah.
but still maintain the integrity.
Right.
That only the Ambroses and the Kendricks of the world seem to offer.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
So there's not a lot of guys that play like pretty chords that can really play a solo and really tell a story and have insane motivic development and continuity.
With
like,
kind of a popularized sensibility. I don't want to say pop, but
no, absolutely. So
really accessible music.
Right. There's almost no one who's like that.
Yeah.
Right. And those few people, that's kind of what I'm that's kind of what I am,
Yeah.
or try to be. But I always felt like I'm lacking on sort of the jazzier side of things. Where, but then again, if you talk to Russ Ferrante, who's my hero and my mentor in some ways,
Yeah.
yeah, he doesn't listen to Russell Ferrante.
Right.
He listens to Herbie Hancock and Wynton Kelly and also other things, but like they have a really 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 strong jazz background,
Sure.
man. Hence the amazing motivic development. Where the fuck do you think it came from?
Yeah.
Film scores? No.
Right.
It came from improvising well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Improvise well, please.
Right.
Like, can you please improvise well?
Sure.
Develop your ideas. Don't trash them. Tell a story. Develop characters. This is the butler. This is the killer. This is the wife.
Yeah, that's actually interesting that you bring it up in kind of a literary sense. What I was thinking is, where do you go to nurture and invest in your imagination for it to come out through musical terms? It's got to be put in some way.
Right. Yeah. I wonder.
Do you use music? Do you go to books? Do you go to movies? Do you
somehow? It's interesting.
listen to TED Talks?
Right. Right. Well, I listen to a ton of TED Talks. I think there's a general feeling. Music in itself is kind of a complete universe for me that sort of probably resonates with it. Certainly, I certainly don't associate necessarily chords with sunsets or melodies. I know which I know a lot of people do, and that makes sense. And I had this experience. I'm like, well, you know what? It kind of does fit. Like, look, it kind of.
Are you a visual thinker? Like, do you kind of see an image that you verbally then try to communicate, or do you think in words? And
I wonder. I'm not even sure. I think it's kind of a textural sort of thinker.
Okay.
Certain things feel a certain way.
Sure.
And certain feelings get tangled in with one another.
Yeah.
And it kind of it's almost like if I was talking to you like this and I was saying this. So you can see that I'm kind of saying something. There's an intention behind. I can't quite tell you what I'm saying.
There's an inflection, and there still is
there's something there that's specific.
There's a story arc there,
right?
In an impressionistic way.
Right. It's kind of like that for me with music in a sense.
Okay.
I can't quite associate it with apple trees.
Sure.
And benches.
Sure.
But
I mean that's the
right.
There's a couple things about that actually. One, when I listen to Pat Metheny group, I can. There's something about that music that ignites my imagination. All of a sudden he provided the soundtrack, and he's asking me to create the movie.
Sure.
I feel like that when I listen to that.
That's awesome.
Other than that, it is just these generic impressions.
Right. Yeah, I get flooded with just emotion.
Yeah.
I just like, it's just something to me. I guess this speaks more than anything to the differences of sort of how different people are wired.
Yeah, of course.
Right. And the different blueprints that we carry within us. But yeah, I mean, it's all gravy. But yeah, for me, it's more of a non-tangible sort of emotional, intentional thing. But I don't know if necessarily as tangible as some other people.
Okay. So I'm still. What would you say then this way to invest into the imagination is for you?
For me, I wonder. I think itself provides more than enough subconscious.
Yeah.
Sort of. I don't want to say baggage in a negative sense, but subconscious sort of material.
Yeah. I mean, there's micro to macro ups and downs.
Right. So there's so much going on, and you're exposed to so many stimuli, from art to heartbreaks to deaths in their family, to successes and to being let down, that your ideals didn't actually map out to reality, being disillusioned. I mean, life itself offers no shortage of events that do remain in your subconscious.
Yeah, of course. And
Right.
they're in the subconscious, even if I think the individual is proactive enough to do the work to recognize it.
Sure.
Because I mean, there's definitely, I believe, a strong percentage of population that doesn't. They're just like, this is day, and Tuesday's going to
Yeah.
be the same as Monday, and I'm
Yeah.
just doing that.
Well, I mean, to be honest, I mean, the data is actually even more grim than that. I mean,
Yeah.
for all we understand, to the best of our understanding, and psychology is a soft science, but the best of our understanding, you and I are no more exempt from those things than any other one.
Sure.
It's just we might be more analytical in nature,
Mm-hmm.
but that doesn't, this all comes down to blind spots, to having personal blind spots.
Sure.
Uh,
About your own
yeah,
your
of
own
course.
story or the world or
Your
both?
own story,
Yeah.
first and foremost. But to stay on topic,
We lost that a long
right,
time
yeah,
ago.
I think, yeah. Which
Yeah.
topic, Ruslan?
Yeah.
This
No,
is
no,
already a
this is
fifth
great.
deviation of
This is great.
yeah, and I find that if you're musically inclined and if you have natural sort of aptitude for music, and if you make sure to master the tools at your
Uh-huh.
disposal, which will take several lifetimes, of
Oh
course,
yeah.
right? Usually, I find that the inspiration is kind of there, sort of. If you're a sensitive person and you've been through a bunch of stuff and
Sure.
you experience and perceive things all the time and deduce and recognize patterns
Mm-hmm.
and feel different emotions and disappointments and inspirations and others. I have yet to be like, you know what? It's just like the issue with me is always the lack of, like, I could be more masterful with the tools to facilitate an easier outpour
Yeah.
than, God, I'm just killing it with the tools and I'm just not inspired to exist.
Right.
It's never quite the latter.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean that's part of it, right? That's the thing that keeps us all going is the deeper we get into it, the more we realize we don't know. And in that sense, it's very parallel to life.
Mm.
And so then you're just like, you realize what you don't know, you understand what you might have a grasp on,
Mm-hmm.
and then you just want to keep being a
Mhm.
better version of yourself. You know,
Mhm.
that's how it translates
Yeah.
when you're not behind your instrument.
Right.
And
Yeah.
it's the same thing. And anybody who's, I would hope, is working on themselves enough in a way to be a better version of
Mhm.
themselves tomorrow,
Mhm.
it's going to be the same dude in the practice room.
Right.
All right,
Yeah.
let me just free this thing up.
Right. That's totally right.
Uh,
That's totally right.
and those are the things that really respond with me, and why I think music is so social all the time. And I guess maybe, I don't know, more so as a bass player, but because my job isn't at the front of the stage.
Mm-hmm.
Although there's guys like Stanley, guys like Thundercat,
Right.
have done amazing things for the instrument
Mm-hmm.
by putting the bass there.
Yep.
The day-to-day bass player isn't there,
Mm-hmm.
and so I have all these micro decisions on every gig at any time
Mm-hmm.
to negotiate these musical things
Right.
between what that guy's doing, what that guy's doing, and it's
Right.
just a social conversation of what do you want on the pizza.
Right. Yeah. That's and there's a parallel there for sure.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the art form. Who said? I think. Do you know Ben? Ben Williams.
Yeah.
So Ben, I think one of his Facebook statuses was something like, bass playing is like, I forgot how he numbered, like 10% technique and 90% decision making.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
Right. Or something like that.
No.
It's almost all of it essentially is decision making.
Yeah. And it's the deeper I get into it, and the more I do these transcriptions I was telling you about, man, that's all it is. And all you can do is broaden your palette of like, okay, what tool am I going to use?
Yeah.
That's, yeah, I mean, that's all it is. It's all these decisions all the time that you don't have time to think about.
That's right.
Just react.
That's right. Well, that's why when they hire, it's the same in business. If they hire like a CEO, and then they want someone who can make, call the right, have
Right.
good judgment with all the variables and all the complexity that's
Sure.
going on around. It's kind of like this. The only difference, of course, is if you don't play the perfect bass part, no investors lose $15 million.
Right. Exactly.
In the case of the CEO, they do.
Yeah.
So
Right.
they have to make sure that his decisions truly, or someone. But that's the same thing. Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
it's all
I mean, there's
decision-making.
no direct financial thing, but I mean the
The music suffers, sure.
exactly, and
Oh, yeah.
that's just as valuable to
Sure,
the other
if-
people you're playing with. If you just
Right.
tank a tune
Mm-hmm.
because you pull some bullshit,
Of course, and the people feel it. Of course, yeah. No, I mean, I wish more people felt this way, the way you feel. Maybe we wouldn't, because I mean, it's hard to argue that truly no one dies.
Right.
No
Right.
bridge falls, and
right?
no investors lose their 401k.
Yeah,
And because of that, people sort of get away with playing, shitty bass parts.
right. Yeah, or on any instrument.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I don't know what it's like for a horn player who's just soloing or interpreting a melody where they're not playing every chorus of every tune in a jazz setting.
Right.
Or a singer, a background singer who's not playing every beat of the music.
Yeah.
But I know for myself as a rhythm section player, you're there for all of it.
That's right.
That's right. And you have to do something with all of it.
That's right. And it has to have a big picture.
Yeah, you have to have this.
And you have to be at the service of some kind of arc.
Yeah.
And there has to be one.
Yeah.
For you to be in the service of. And you have to negotiate time with the drummer. And
sure. Yeah, I mean, thankfully it's Los Angeles, and like that work is not daunting. There's so many great drummers here.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm a happy boy more often than not,
Right, of course.
But in other scenarios.
Right, of course, and we've all been.
Yeah.
In all of these, from the good to the bad.
Right. So we were talking about it when we started. You got something to do? I don't want to keep you.
Oh no.
I mean, I don't care if you do. I don't want to.
I'm good for now.
You just got done with Josh. You did 5 weeks with Josh Groban.
Yeah, I did 5 weeks with Josh. I'm going out in a couple of weeks with Richard Bono.
Oh, nice.
And Larry Carlton, and then.
Hold on, are those two different tours, or is Richard
doing?
No,
it's the same band. Yeah.
Okay.
It's the same band, and.
Whose name is that under?
I think they're both. They're
okay.
both on the
They're
marquee.
doing this tag. Who's on drums on that?
I think Gene Coy.
Nice.
Gene Coy, that's right.
Nice.
Gene Coy. Yeah, so that's.
I gotta have a talk with Richard, man.
Was it?
I have to have a talk with Richard.
Oh yeah.
Where's he live?
Oh, I think he's.
Is he in New York?
He in France? Or I'm not really sure.
Huh.
Not really. I haven't played with him in many years. It'll be good to run into him again and play a bunch of his tunes. We're gonna be out for 3 weeks.
Okay. And that's after Josh.
Yeah, Josh is done. And I was subbing on Josh for about a month.
But you knew the book. Is it the same book?
Oh no,
you were
it's not. No, I've been off the gig for 6 years.
Really? Has it been that long?
Dude. Yeah.
Hold on. So, quick rewind. You moved to LA. You're doing Stanley, Brian McKnight.
Yeah. Okay. So.
I mean, I know that's way back in the conversation, but let's pick up the road guy work from this.
Of course, yeah. And so I'm in LA, so I'm doing what people do in LA. Now that I'm playing with Brian McKnight, now, okay, so there's an audition for, I don't know, whatever the fuck, Avril Lavigne. So I'm going to go do that.
Yeah.
There's an audition for Seal, and I went and I did that. I'm just doing the LA thing,
Yeah.
So I auditioned for Seal, and I got the gig, and I was with Seal for about a year. So that, and then you gotta keep sort of rolling. People realize that you learn the parts.
Yeah.
People realize that you show up on time.
Yeah.
People realize that you can be counted on.
Right.
In some regards, so they recommend you for other shit.
Yeah.
You just sort of keep going.
Just stay in that.
Yeah.
That thing.
And I did for a while, but then I always had Stanley, which was a little more of a creative sort of output than, I don't know, Seal.
Yeah. But a different experience of kind of, I would imagine, equal value. Like you're doing Seal and Brian McKnight, who like, that's a bigger platform.
Yeah.
throughout the world.
Yeah. I mean,
Stanley Clarke's amazing, and
mm-hmm.
guys like us know him. And
Mm-hmm.
I've said multiple times on this thing that Stanley Clarke was my first record ever.
Oh, right on.
Yeah, like
Yeah, I know for sure.
big Stanley.
Yeah,
fan.
but then with Stanley, I got to improvise.
Yeah, exactly.
I got to improvise and interplay.
Mm-hmm.
And
now, how did all the part playing from the pop acts influence your jazz playing? Did you start coming at it with that kind of story to build?
It made me a little more discerning.
Yeah.
In my choices, it made me a little more discerning, a little more sort of confined, and a little more, which actually can result in great creativity. It's just, yeah, you have to understand that every note matters.
Right.
Right. So every note matters in every genre.
Yeah.
Except because jazz is improvised, you could live under a delusion that in jazz, not every note you play matters. Mm-hmm. But that, of course, is a delusion. Yeah. Right? It matters just as it does in pop. It's just in pop, every note matters. Kind of that principle is more applied because
freedom is limited.
Right. Yeah. It's not about improvising in the first place.
Right.
So, and jazz, it's just like, well, okay, every note matters, and that put more emphasis on my every note matters.
Yeah. So the pop gigs.
Yeah, they help, but they also clog some of your creativity, because to be creative is also a muscle.
Yeah.
And that a muscle, just like any muscle, it atrophies if you don't use it.
Right.
Like right now, I came back from Josh.
Okay.
And it was a great tour, and we sounded awesome. It was freaking great. But, like, I'll have to get the cables back, connected again from my mind to my hands. And
how much time do you have between Josh and Larry?
About a month.
Okay, so you got some time to...
Yeah, it'll be fine.
Get back in shape.
And I'm also an experienced enough player that I'm not going to sound like shit.
You haven't forgotten it all.
Right. I mean, I'm going to sound fine, and by the fifth gig, I'll sound even better.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's a different thing. You have to always... that's kind of a use it or lose it
thing. Of course.
One of the purest jazz guys once told me, and he's right, I'll never forget it. I'm not going to name any names. He said, Ruslan, consider that there are people in the world, musicians, who had all the opportunities to play the pop gigs like you did, and they just deliberately chose not to. For this reason.
Right.
Because they wanted this muscle worked.
Right. They wanted to do that thing. Yeah, sure.
So consider that there are other people who could have done the pop stuff you've done, and that they actually chose not to. Actually did. And it cost them American dollars. It cost them money.
Right.
The choice actually cost them currency.
Sure.
Which, of course, it did. Look, fair enough. It's true.
Yeah, and there's no wrong there. Those are just
right. But
personal decisions, career decisions.
Right,
whatever.
But then don't be surprised.
Yeah.
If you go on a tour now and you're playing the same song for the 12th night and you have nothing new to play.
Yeah.
Okay. There is no choice in life that doesn't come with some sort of price.
Of course.
Right? So don't be surprised if it's the 12th night and, I don't know, Walter is just getting his trousers off.
Yeah,
right? And, you, like, or me, or whoever, is kind of struggling to come up with something creative to do.
Sure.
Yeah, what do you think? Yeah, because he, too, could have played for Lauryn Hill.
Right.
And just decided not to, because he knew he wasn't going to get to do that there.
Right, yeah, and
that's what he wanted to do.
Right, that's personal value.
That's
like
right.
if this...
That's right.
If that means more to you, then go do that.
That's exactly correct.
Yeah.
That's exactly correct.
Which, I think that is... I don't know how to put it. That is a big thing that I wish was really invested into a young generation. is really figuring out where you, not where you're going to go. I mean, I think life in general is open-ended, and there's no, whatever you think it's going to be, it's never going to be that.
Yeah.
On a lot of levels, career-wise, personal, whatever, economic.
Mm-hmm.
But at least when it comes to music, not your career within music, but who you want to be in the world as a musician and artist, I would like to see those conversations happen with younger players early on, because there's nothing wrong with a tenor player still wanting to be John Coltrane or Mark Turner or Walter. Yes, if you want to put in that much work, yes, do it. They did.
Yeah.
So it can be done. But if you don't want to make those sacrifices and sacrifice all this for that.
Well, I guess the way I'd put it, if those occurred to you as sacrifices in the first place,
then that's a
problem.
Yeah,
right?
that's a telling card.
Yeah, exactly. So the person was telling me that they chose not to. They could have played pop gigs and they didn't.
Right.
I'm pretty sure those pop gigs. I'm pretty sure passing on those pop gigs did not occur to them as sacrifice.
Right, or even passing, just like, I'm not into it.
Yeah, it wasn't like they. I'm pretty sure they didn't feel like they sacrificed anything.
Right. No one.
And that's really the point, right?
Sure.
It's not. It's really knowing who you are and where you belong. Because it's knowing who you are and who you're not.
Right, because it's the same thing.
Right. Well, right.
To be one is to automatically not be the other.
In a way, yeah. At least when depth is perceived, when depth is concerned, it's like,
That was probably, I used to do a duo thing on Sunday nights with a guitar player named Julian Corea.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he's in town right now. I got to hit him up. And we did a fun little thing to amuse ourselves of just doing mashups between pop tunes and standards. So it'd go from Black Hole Sun into Donna Lee into Radiohead into whatever. And it was fun. Whatever.
Oh, yeah.
But I remember one gig, he just left rehearsal with Alanis Morissette because they were getting ready to go out on this world tour. And I thought it was hilarious. Like, he just leaves Alanis to go, but he still shows up at the Fed to play in the corner for people who are going to talk over us all night. And so we were talking about that, and he's like, man, it's the humanity of it all. Like, there's a part of me that has to do this. He's like, if I can anything, like if I can offer anybody anything, my only thing to tell everybody is stick to your own self. Whatever that is. Like, just don't not. Like, don't ever give up on that. Right. Whatever's in you, because that's special, that's unique, that's the voice no one's heard, that's hitting the bullseye that someone else will try to reach for at some point.
That's right. And you don't have to because it's in you already.
Right, because you're just doing you.
Yeah.
And that was probably the best piece of advice about music I
agree.
Received.
If you have anything to offer to the world at all, that would probably be it.
Yeah, it's your individuality.
Yeah. Totally.
And I to circle back quickly, I think jazz school will kill that.
It can. It certainly can. Because it kind of industrializes the process a little bit.
It doesn't. That's a great word, industrialize.
It can. It doesn't have to necessarily, but it certainly can, because it has to scale the process.
Sure. They have to. There has to be a pass or fail element to it because it's through a school.
But then, okay, but that's always sort of the dance, right? I mean, that's always the dance of the tangible and the intangible. It's not like there is no pass or fail element to art, right? If you play with shitty time, or bad intonation, then I don't care about your originality. So it's always this funny dance, and it's really hitting that bullseye.
But then within art, there's always an allowance for it,
right?
Because then you like, nah, it's an Ornette thing. Like, I'm fine. I'm totally good. I just nailed the Ornette thing.
Right.
You know, so everything is subjective. So there really isn't, or at least there shouldn't be any pass or fail. I mean, this gets back into personal ethos of I don't
Mhm.
really believe that there's a right or wrong in life.
Mhm.
It's just
Right.
you're just doing it.
Well,
You know,
I
there's
guess
better and
right.
worse.
I guess it comes down to the game we play. There is games you can play, right, in
Sure.
life. Like in the game of bebop, you have to keep good time,
The game of bebop for sure.
right?
Yeah.
So we invent sort of games,
If we're playing by these rules, then yes.
right? So to have a sense of accomplishment,
Yeah.
there usually needs to be a game,
Yeah.
right? Otherwise, you're just sort of floating
Right. You're just floundering
in
around.
space.
Yeah.
So you can't feel a sense of winning if
Right.
there was no way for you to lose at all,
Sure.
right? It's like playing tennis without the net,
Right.
So like it's
Yeah.
not. Is it real? So. And this is an age-old debate pertaining to art, right? So is where is the art? So I guess we live in a pretty liberalistic human liberalism sort of age
Mm-hmm.
where that maps itself onto everything,
Mm-hmm.
including the arts.
Yeah.
Human liberalism says that the individual himself or herself is the ultimate judge of
Right.
of value. It's the soul of the person. This is the direct sprout from the Abrahamic religions, but it found itself in the ideology of liberalism and humanism, where this human is the center of all value and of itself, and that's when applied to economics, you get the customer is always right.
Right.
When applied to art, you get liberalism applied to art. You get that it's always in the eyes of the beholder.
Yeah.
Right. When applied to, I don't know, politics, you get democracies.
Uh-huh.
People will decide based on what they feel and sense is right, even though they're not necessarily experts.
Sure.
They'll decide who's going to govern the world. So the liberal sort of approach to art is definitely this one. Are we still?
Seems like we're going. There's a little bit of a lag.
Oh, maybe it's because it's a long wave file.
Might be. No, we're still going.
Okay, sweet. Yeah, so it hasn't always been like this. What's the name of the French sculptor who? Oh God, I keep forgetting his name. Who in the early, I think, 19th century, the early 20th century, put a toilet in the museum and said, "This is now art."
Okay.
And it's still famous. It costs millions and millions of dollars. It was a shift in perception. There truly is no
Sure.
right and wrong.
Similar to John Cage.
Right. When we are applying when liberalism, humanist liberalism,
Yeah.
is applied to arts, you end up with this value structure where truly the individual and no one but the individual
Right.
is the source of all value and proper judgment. This is how you get schools where the students pick their own classes.
Right.
And this is how you get democracies with people who know or don't know still get to decide what's right. This is how the customer is always right. So this is how it's in the eye of the beholder. Liberal humanist values applied across all cultural platforms.
Sure.
And in music, indeed, just like you said, we are in this age where this is indeed the prevalent.
Yeah.
Received opinion. It hasn't always been this way at all. In fact, most of history it completely wasn't. Most artwork that we treasure today as the relics of some of the greatest traditions, of some of the most unbelievable creations, come to us from eras where people would laugh at you if they heard that you tell them there's no right or wrong in art.
Sure.
Like all the music that they teach in the universities today, all the entirety of classical music.
Right.
What do you mean there's no right or wrong? Are you crazy? They tell you.
Right.
But of course, to your defense, many of them became so successful and famous because they broke some of the received rules. Except their luck was that they were, firmly trained in them.
Yeah, and then,
then broke them, which is very different from the nihilism of like.
Right. Again,
all
good
bets
word.
are off.
And, right. Knowing and choosing not to is completely different.
Yeah.
Than never putting in the time. To
right. But so I'm always I'm of course part of the humanist liberal movement and ethos myself.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just very cautious being a Soviet and Russian.
Right.
guy like that's like,
Yeah.
this is right and wrong. I'm always very cautious of leaving a way out
Yeah.
for people. There's a post pre. Are you familiar with the pre and post fallacy?
No.
Where there's a they asked, it was a good example of this would be they asked 12-year-old girls if they're pro-abortion or against.
Okay.
And they were 12 and they learned about sex like a year ago.
Yeah.
And they said, "Oh, we're pro."
Okay.
They said, "Why?" "Well, because we feel like it."
Yeah.
And then they asked them at 19, "Are you pro or are you against?" They said they were against.
Okay.
"Why against?" "Well, because you killed a baby, because
Yeah.
And then they asked them at 30,
Yeah.
and they were pro again.
Yeah, sure.
But whatever the reasons were that they were pro, of course, weren't the same reasons they were pro at 12.
Right.
You understand?
Right. It's
It
now an
might
informed
appear
decision.
right. It might appear that yes, indeed, they land on the same
Outcome's the same. Yeah.
outcome, the same, but there's nothing in common
Right.
between those decisions.
Sure.
Right. So it's the pre and post.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, breaking the rules and nothing is. It's always the yin and yang here is always very important. I'm always very cautious. The yin and yang here is always nothing is wrong or right objectively in any absolute sense.
Right.
But
Yes. Right. I mean, because then, I mean, this is all I think relatable to music, but not necessarily. It's not only pertaining to that topic. Everybody will put their own boundaries on it. Not necessarily, to go back real quick, not necessarily as if you're playing the game of bebop, and to use that in a bigger sense, not only when you're playing this thing in life or that thing in life, people will do whatever they want. And then, but have a little caveat. But,
right.
So, A through M in the alphabet is fair game. But you know what? At N, I draw the line.
Right. You're saying that too is arbitrary.
I mean, it's this kind of flex within where people subscribe value and not value and what is okay and what is not okay. And then I have to wonder how much of this is based in their own human experience, maybe even upbringing that they couldn't control.
Sure. Correct.
Or decisions that they could control and have some kind of guilt about.
Right.
Or feel amazing about, given the circumstances, that they will defend it. So it's still completely self-focused and narcissistic in a way. And now I do think that relates almost 100% to music. Because whatever their experience is, whether who they are, who they want to be, or who they want others to think they are, will defend their ethos about what music is.
Right, and so you don't think just interesting, just to be devil's advocate.
Yeah.
You don't think that there is a there there. That there's a there there. You don't think that there's actually something that in order for it to work.
I think again, if you're playing to use the thing, if we're playing the game of bebop, those are agreed upon rules. Everybody shows up to the table knowing the game.
Okay, so do you think there is a game that is sort of an umbrella sort of game, a music game, in the sense where there is something about, again, it's really difficult to put in words, there is something about tension and release applied on 32 multiple levels at the same time, that if it's not there, it's actually bad music. It doesn't work. It doesn't provoke an emotion.
I can
There's
absolutely
something about
say, without a doubt, and maybe this gets into what you were talking about of like I subscribe to value because of my personal thing, but I know, I guess I'm doing this because I know I can't speak for everybody and everybody's experience is different. I have no emotional reaction to it in a good way. If someone is playing out of time and we're playing rock with you, and someone is just playing out of time. Okay, you just messed up my experience here, and you do not sound good on this agreed
because
set
this
of
game
rules.
has rules.
Yes, and you are not playing by the rules we all agreed on.
Right.
Now, if same person, no matter what instrument, whatever, if we are going to show up to some pottery class and just interpret the move the movement of the pottery as it goes around. And it's this really just organic, cultural, reactive, do what you feel, everything's fine, Jackson Pollock situation. Then cool. Those are the rules we agree on there. But you can't hold Mona Lisa and Jackson Pollock to the same set of rules.
Right. But I wonder. This gets to the sort of the heart of the issue for me of all anything resembling any kind of ultimate reality or not, being there or not being there. I've always, and this is perhaps a semi-religious statement, right? I've always felt like there is something that even the Jackson Pollock has to have.
There's a baseline.
There is something that is inscribed in physical existence. Some kind of the closest I ever got to describing what it is some forms of dance of black versus white, tension versus release, something very, 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 very rudimentary.
Yeah.
Like that plays out on multiple levels at the same time. There's something about being able to work with duality on multiple levels that if you don't take into account in your free pottery class, you will cease to reflect something very intuitively sort of fundamental about the world. Something like gravity.
Right.
Right. Something like whatever you create, if it's perfectly devoid
of all rules.
Because is existence itself really devoid of all rules?
No, not at all.
Right. So then, and this is me just thinking out loud, and this is getting pretty.
No, it's getting
abstract.
nebulous, yeah.
Right, but this is if as long as we're both sort of tracking the conversation.
Sure.
I've always wondered. I've never seen anything work where all bets were truly off.
No, because that level of chaos will implode.
Right.
It will burn itself out.
Correct. So, but then please consider that. Please keep in mind that when you're talking about the pottery class or about something, a term that I hate very much, unfortunately, not because of the term, because of its use, like free jazz, right? Like free jazz should be, or that pottery class should be the ultimate platform for the most amazing self-expression.
Yeah.
Then why does it always sound so similar and chaotic?
Right.
And
I agree with that.
Right. So it is precisely because people who come to doing it are such liberal humanists. And they say that you really can't go wrong. I did this.
Yeah.
I could have done something different.
So it is right now. Everybody adjusts to me.
And I'm left sort of like I'm undone at the thought of this.
I've heard some of that music live. That was the best musical experiences.
That's right.
I've had in my life.
Why would I bet every dollar that there were rules?
Right.
And I wasn't there with you.
But at the same time...
But I would bet every dollar that if this was your experience, this was not as chaotic and irresponsible. It could have been in rules that were invented on the spot.
Sure.
It could have been rules that were intuitively arrived at, which would be amazing.
Or maybe not even rules, just this platform of understanding that everybody agreed on. They were... there's these dudes out of New York, Tony Malaby, Mark Elias, and Tom Rainey. It was Mark Elias's Open Loose Trio. One of the best musical experiences I've ever heard in my life.
Wow.
They took it so far, and like they showed up. They work a lot together. They showed up with this understanding of each other, and it was a unit. But you see, it wasn't a free-for-all pottery class.
That's exactly right.
There was still a fundamental, agreed-upon concept
Right.
that they're gonna build.
There
off
was
the
a
concept.
game that you could fail.
Right.
If we want to abstract it to the maximum.
Sure.
There was. I don't even have to say it could fail. The fact there was a game, it means you can fail or win. There was a game, rather.
Right.
That's what I should have said.
Yeah.
There was a game. And the game...
I do think there's always a game.
Well, I think
Because
I'm a
where
strict...
people put the rules in the game are fascinating to me.
I see.
Like I think that's what I have what I'm interested in poking the bear about is I don't know why this is the only analogy I can think of right now, and this is a terrible analogy. But if I were to walk outside and kill somebody, I get 20 to life. Right? That is against the rules in society. If I was sent to Afghanistan right now and I take another life, I might be celebrated.
Correct.
By the people that make the same rules. So, like, it is not the outcome that is judged.
Actual, right.
It's people flipping the game on you.
It's the context in which it occurs, right? Of course.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I think, I guess that's...
Right, another analogy would be someone performing a field surgery without anesthesia or someone stabbing someone with a knife.
Right, exactly, yeah.
Right. I always resort to that one. Right.
Yeah, that's much better.
No, it's actually exactly the same. Yeah, it's exactly.
It's either violence or has
right.
a purpose.
What do you mean? He made a perforated hole in his body with a knife.
Yeah, I killed the enemy.
Which one is it? Right. Yeah.
I guess context is a big thing to me. And
so what I'm
back
saying
to music is
right. So what are we to make of but to say that it's all. I'm trying to arrive at what you said. So to say that it's all in the eye of the beholder, there is no right and wrong, is essentially to say. It's you're not by saying those words claiming that there need be no rules. What you're essentially claiming that yes, there should be rules, but there are no single set of rules.
There's no absolutism, because taking a life is not always a bad thing.
Sure.
Now, I'm not saying I'm on mic when I just said that phrase.
Sure.
That's in relation to the war and the homicide outside.
If you're seeing a person who's about to shoot 20 kids,
sure.
If you don't take his life right there and then, you're a monster.
Right, exactly. Right. If you let that happen, then you're a monster.
You just let him kill 20 children.
Yeah, right. Like awful. So it's not that the absolutism of taking a life is wrong, right? There's always this kind of gray area.
Even something like this. So let alone in something as unnecessary for survival as music and art.
Right. As bebop.
Bebop, right. And they'll be the strictest ones with their rules.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
I like how that one finally came full circle.
Right. Look, we just justified killing someone by reinventing games life. I think we can deal with, mid-1960s hard bop.
Yeah.
Right? That never really killed anyone. Breaking some rules there.
That's good.
Oh, man.
Man, thanks for doing this.
Good stuff. My pleasure. Wow, we've gone to this. I still wonder, the composer in me wonders whether this should have been 17 different podcasts.
It can be.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Or was this actually a one genuine good one?
No, I think I like this. I like the whole arc of this.
Good.
Yeah.
Very cool. Right on.
Fantastic.
I'm happy to be part of it. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, man. Kill it.
Yeah, man.
All right, that was the talk with Ruslan Sirota, right? The conversation took some turns. Man, there was a lot of fun, though. I really had a lot of fun doing that one. Again, please subscribe to the Bass Shed podcast. If you are enjoying it, please feel free to rate it accordingly to how much you enjoy it. It's available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and Google Play, so subscribe as well. That would be cool. Coming up on the podcast, I've been talking to bass player Steve Jenkins, and looks like we're going to get a chance to sit down together. I'm really excited about that one. He's got some records out that are really, really happening. So check those out on iTunes or Spotify, Steve Jenkins. And pay attention I'm not telling you to pay attention. I feel like that's too aggressive. Keep an eye out. Keep an eye out for the episode with him. That should be coming at you in a few weeks. With that, thanks for listening, and I will catch you on the next one.